Conservation charity, the RSPB, has been forced to apologise after it launched a scathing attack on the government. In a post on X, formerly known as Twitter, the organisation described Rishi Sunak, Michael Gove and Therese Coffey as liars in response to government plans to scrap water pollution restrictions for housing developments in England. 3 hours later, the charity issued a statement saying that their tweet falls below the standard we set ourselves, and for that we apologise. We will continue, they say, to campaign vigorously on behalf of nature, but we will always do so in a polite and considered manner. According to the Charity Commission figures, the RSPB's received more than £78 million in government funding since 2018. The tweet and the subsequent apology have sparked debate about the politicisation of the third sector, with critics claiming charities are using millions of pounds of public money to subsidise left-wing campaigns. Now, journalist Poppy Coburn goes as far as to say they are threatening parliamentary democracy. And we can pick up that point with the Telegraph's assistant comment editor, Poppy Coburn. Welcome, Poppy. It's quite a statement. Threatening parliamentary democracy, that's what, worse than terrorism, worse than the rise of the far right? It's what? How bad is it?
Well, it can sound quite extreme to go after the charity
sector. It does sound quite extreme.
No, quite. I mean, I think people typically think when you look at the charity sector that you're going after kind old ladies who are collecting donations outside of a supermarket, perhaps for a local donkey charity, or looking after children in need. But the modern charity sector doesn't look like that at all. The modern charity sector is something that's incredibly politicised and very well funded. And I think, unfortunately, what we've seen over the last couple of days exemplifies precisely the sort of attitudes that major charity sector leaders have. I don't know if you remember, but the Wellcome Trust...
Forgive me for interrupting, but I haven't yet heard you talk about their threat to parliamentary democracy. How are they one of the greatest threats, as you say, to parliamentary democracy?
Well, as I was just about to say, the charity sector is far better funded than any political lobbying group in Britain. We can look, for example, at the Wellcome Trust. The Wellcome Trust recently advertised a position just on the position of, essentially in a human resources role, which was to say they'd be looking for somebody who'd be promoting diversity within the firm for £211,000.
All right, so
that's more than the Prime Minister made.
And so you see promoting diversity as a threat to democracy?
No, I'm saying that there's an incredible amount of money behind the charity sector at the moment.
I'm going to read your quote back again and see if you can just get to what you mean. So you describe it as one of the greatest threats to parliamentary democracy.
Yes.
That is hyperbole, it sounds to me. I haven't yet heard you actually say how they are threatening parliamentary democracy.
Well, let's get back to the story at hand.
Have another go at answering the question.
This is a sector which is incredibly well funded, which is legally
This you've already said.
A legally protected sector, as was described by Baroness Tina Stowell, who used to be the head of the Charity Commission, who described recently in response to this particular story that the charity sector has basically become out of control.
OK.
And that it has legally protected
Let me give you another. Let's move on from that.
Has almost as many employees as the NHS
Let's talk
has.
about the tweet by the RSPB. So they're a charity whose purpose it is to promote environmental protection. So when they see the government apparently pulling back on environmental protections, isn't it absolutely their job to call that out?
Well, not if they're funded by the government.
Oh,
no.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
I mean, in the last couple of years, they've had millions of pounds from the government. This is an example of a completely unacceptable political... The charity sector is meant to have a non-political approach. It is supposed to support the areas in which it is of interest, which is to say promoting the environmental causes, but to be calling government ministers liars,
yes,
to create a graphic on Twitter...
And they did apologise for that. So let me ask you...
But they haven't taken the post down, so they can't be that apologetic about it.
Isn't it absolutely their job, where they see government policy or anyone doing something that goes against what they stand for, isn't it absolutely their job to call that out?
But that's not a professional's way to call someone out.
Oh,
would you call out a colleague on Twitter and say, would you mock up a graphic and call them a liar? I mean, somebody who was would you do this to your boss?
Is it their method that they used to do it, or the fact that they did it that you object to?
There's nothing wrong with a charity objecting to what the government is doing in terms of policy, but the manner in which they've gone about this.
I think we're all agreed on that, right? You keep talking about the amount of the millions that the charity sector receives, and you made the point that if they receive money from the government, then they shouldn't be criticising the government, which strikes me as being absurd.
The point is that the money they are receiving from the government is being used not for non-political charitable purposes, which would be promoting the environmental causes in terms of like schemes. It's often used to lobby on behalf of political causes for the government. And I think, unfortunately, something we've seen in recent years is that the charity sector has felt emboldened to push for highly politicised causes in the name of this being for charitable reasons, which is unfortunately undermining the name of charitable causes in Britain. Charity is meant to be non-political, and this is being used in a very explicitly political manner. This is attacking democratically elected politicians.
Let's bring our panel back into the discussion. Tessa Dunlop is with us, Ryan Saby is with us. Thoughts on what you've heard?
I'm just wondering, Poppy, do you give to charity? And if so, which charities do you give to?
Yeah, I actually used to volunteer for charitable causes. I did the Duke of Edinburgh course when I was at school. So, yes, I volunteered at charities when I was younger.
Right, so a scheme supported by the royal family you were fine with, but you take offence with the idea of a large charity, the RSPB, speaking up for the voiceless birds whose population has more than
the voiceless
half.
birds. Well, let me speak on behalf of the voiceless young people of this country that want to be able to build homes. I mean, the policy that the RSP is trying to institute at the moment, which is the nutrient neutrality bill, would mean that it's almost impossible to build houses in this country. And as Minister Michael Gove has quite rightly pointed out, this is something that's going to strangle growth for this country and ruin the lives of young people. I mean, it's all very well and good to speak on behalf of the birds, but somebody also has to speak on behalf of the voters of this country.
Indeed, and you make a very good point, but given that we've had terrible issues with the water pollution recently, with sewage, isn't it? And this is all tied to water. I don't understand why you have such an issue with them bringing this up as a point. As they are saying this is a big issue. They cannot save birds just by putting out little bits of, food and us, I don't know, putting our bird tables out of reach of the cats. Actually, it requires leadership. And what they're saying is we haven't got sufficient leadership. You can't say, if you accuse them of lies being too much of a polemic, your headline or your line in your article saying this undermines parliamentary democracy means poppycock. If the entire charity sector was piling in behind the birds, this is one charity. I think it's disproportionate, just like their tweet was disproportionate in this moment and badly written. I think perhaps you could concede that you might be guilty of the same thing.
I don't think you're going to get any concessions. So let's before we bring in Ryan, the Sun has picked up on this particular point as well.
They're on your side, by the way,
When did charities like the RSPB become some sort of provisional wing of the Labour Party, says Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor. Did you ever work under Trevor Kavanagh?
I worked when he was a columnist, yeah. So we certainly worked together over time. But I think Trevor brings up a really, really good point. This issue has kind of been going on for many years. He talks about charities that were, he calls it, infiltrated by new Labour apparatchiks. Those people are given to, individuals who work for Child Poverty Action Group or Save the Children, NSPTC. So if ever there was a moment when Tory welfare reform was being raised, they'd had the attack dogs who used to work for the Labour Party used to attack Tory policy. Now, if that's the case, do you think that the Charity Commission should have more powers to crack down on this? Where do you think the Charity Commission role has in this?
Well, I think, unfortunately, under the Conservative government, they have tried multiple times, and we can see this under William Shawcross and also Baroness Tina Stowell, that there has been attempts to crack down on the politicalisation of the charity sector. But unfortunately, what has happened is that all this has served to do is antagonise people. The charity sector deals with very many charities. There are hundreds of thousands of charities in Britain, the vast majority of whom are working for incredibly virtuous causes. But there are also cases, as we can see today, where there are outliers, where people step over the line. The problem is we don't know how to crack down on people.
I don't want to crack down on the voice
far.
of a charity. If a charity employs expertise and the expertise suggests that more birds are in danger, I want to know about that. So when I go to the ballot box next year, I can make a choice. Am I going to rescind my contribution to the RSPB, or am I not going to vote in for the politician that passed that through the Houses of Parliament, making, therefore, an informed and democratic decision?
But of course, this charity is not acting in a political political vacuum. It is funded by the government.
It's
this is a
partially
royal
funded.
charity.
It's
No,
partially
this is a
funded.
charity that has privileged legal status.
Good.
It quite literally has a royal in its name. It has to be careful with its conduct. We can't simply say that any charity
We've
that has
established that the
royalism...
word liar was inappropriate, a bit like your idea that somehow it's
Well, they
undermining
haven't
parliamentary
removed the
democracy.
status. And let's be frank,
forgive me for
nobody who works for this charity
Forgive me for
disagrees
interrupting you a
with the
little
statements
bit.
they made.
Cheap.
We may have to just
I'm the bird.
move you over there and you over there. Ryan Sabey, just pick up on the point that you made about the Charity Commission. It seems to have dropped the ball more than somewhat over the years.
Yeah, I think the issue is that they should probably be keeping a bit closer eye on what the charity sector or some people in the charity sector are actually saying. So if there is a moment where they are, these charities or individuals in those charities are trashing government record, do they need to crack down on that a little bit quicker? And I think that might be the issue where they could more powers could be given to them, or they could enforce the powers they actually have. Far more readily.
OK, we'll leave it. It's steady. We'll leave it there.
The big one was covering Rishi Sunak's house, wasn't it the biggest?
Dunlop, I will send you out if you carry on like this. All right. Thank you very much, Poppy Coburn from the Telegraph. You're watching TalkTV.